Hello folks, my name is Jay and welcome back. In my past two videos, me and my friends went into what we liked, loved, and despised of the Batman White Knight universe, and more notably, what we would go about fixing to make it close to what we wanted it to be. But my last two videos were all about what Russ, Anarchy, and Nines would change. This time, it's my turn. With the pages and pages worth of information I've collected, I plan to create my very own version of the Murphyverse, along with a few little what-if tangents near the end. Let's get into it, folks. I think I'll start with a few broader stroke changes, just to cover all my bases on things I'll change about everything before I go into detail about how I'll change things run by run. First and foremost, this was a complaint first lodged by Anarchy that I felt was an urgent need to be corrected, this complaint being that almost every book in this Elseworld felt cramped and like it needed to be lengthened. So we'll start by adding 2 more issues to White Knight, Curse the White Knight, and Presents Harley Quinn. Meanwhile, I'll add 4 issues to Beyond the White Knight, turning it from an 8-issue run to a 12-issue maxi. I'll go into exactly why in a little bit. I'm not going to touch on the length of the other Presents books. Then, since we can change whatever we want, let's nudge characters at least a little bit closer to their mainline versions, just to stop the frustration from growing every time you pick up the book, even if not to the pre-New 52 characterization, at the very least to the current states of characters in I think it's called Dawn of DC. I've got no clue what the name for it is. I'm sure you get my drift anyways. I'm pretty sure that's all of the big stuff that affects every single run, but I think that now we can start from the beginning. Kind of in line with what I said before about fixing the characterization, I would take Nine's suggestion for White Knight in making all of the characters a little bit smarter. Pretty small, but honestly kind of an important backbone. With this boost in IQ, we give Babs more agency apart from Bruce and Dick. She's Barbara Gordon, how can we not? Does Oracle mean nothing to people? Make her act more like a grown adult with her own opinions and ideals instead of a teenager there to be confused by science and distracted by cute things. From there, we put some more research and real-world influence to these news sections, calling on the reader's prior knowledge of real-world events to deepen the meaning of the themes. Also in the new segments, we put more emphasis on the happenings of wider Gotham and the opinions of the people. Perhaps this could be portrayed by interspersing the panels of the news reports with posts made by Gotham citizens on various social media sites. I think this is a smaller thing, but can we please remove the connotation of Jack being a white knight because of his caucasity? If Two-Face was able to avoid it in The Dark Knight, we can find a way to avoid it here. When the Harleys meet, can we can the feminism comment? The real step back for feminism is dictating that Marion couldn't dress like that because she wanted to. And there was honestly nothing indicating that that wasn't a choice. And that choice is what feminism is about. Come on, Harleen. Kind of on the topic of the Harleys. I know that a big thing that this series stands on is that the Joker not being that bad, but we all know he is. Why not play on that a little bit more? Give more reason that Joker and Marion were toxic as opposed to Marion just being petty about losing the man. In the universe where Marion's based off, we get a pretty good gist of the Joker being a piece of shit and Harley staying because she's been manipulated. Can we get some of that here too? And despite all of the mind control BS, can we have Marion maybe show a bit more of a connection to the rogues, especially Ivy? I want to have some feeling later on that the rogue's death actually matters to her. When it comes to Duke Thomas's introduction and character throughout the entire book, we have a lot of restructuring to do. While the simplest thing to do would just be to cut Duke out of canon and paste him into White Knight, that really isn't going to work. For starters, in a world where metahumans aren't really explored until books that have yet to come out, we can't transition Duke's powers over, and this book doesn't have time to cover his backstory to the extent it deserves, so instead, we'll take most elements of Duke's character, including him being a teenager, over from canon, and this is going to include the Joker's impact on his backstory, in which the Joker uses his Joker whatever the heck poison gas on his parent. Because of this, his role in the story changes, and he's initially antagonistic to Jack and Harley before given reason to join their side. In addition to giving Duke more of a reason to be Duke and not just some rando, this is also a device to explain more of Jack's side to the reader, giving more justification for the reader to be rooting for Jack. Also, I'm getting rid of Duke being a gang leader because that felt racially motivated and changing it to him being a respected and incorporated member of the community, a lot like Gan is in Presents Red Hood. Jack's run for council takes more inspiration from protests covering similar topics, again relying on the reader's prior knowledge. It's a black label book. It can expect the reader to know the news. With this, how about covering more of the protests that Jack engages in and more of the people's perception of him leading up to his election, possibly tying in a debate with the competitor for the position. And with expecting readers to know things, I expect the author to know the weight of what's being used too. For example, covering the Nazi influence on the plot with more care and delicacy than it's currently shown. Nothing wrong with showing bad things, but there's even less wrong with showing a certain level of sensitivity regarding them. And to be less profound, how about not making a notable Jewish family into Nazi collaborators? This is a small tangent, but I'm flipping through my TPB for all this, and can it so that when creating the layout, the book doesn't do this? And to finish it off, how about one final news segment? Once again interspersed with posts from the netizens on how Gotham feels about all of this. terms of Curse of the White Knight, we've already covered a lot of major changes, notably with Nines' complete rewrite, which I will mostly be co-opting. Go look back at the last video to really get a good sense of Curse here, but I would like to work on some other changes suggested to make it something everyone can appreciate. We'll start by extending the runtime to 10 issues to give everything that we thought up more room to breathe. Following Babs' back being injured in issue 4, we'll leave her injured as a way to lead into turning Babs from Batgirl to Oracle. Within the book, she already showed a penchant for computers, so it would make sense for her to transition from her earlier role to the one that she's best known for, by people who actually read comics. This can also give more avenues for giving Babs more agency and character of her own that isn't directly connected to anyone else. Considering how much importance the theme of legacy has over the entire Elseworld, let's change the way that Bruce reacts to the legacy of his family. Bruce cares about Gotham, that's inherently why he's Batman, but in Curse, he cares more about the fact that he's not a real Wayne than he cares about the effect that his family has left behind, which, in the Murphyverse, isn't that great of an effect, so let's change it. Countless different forms of Batman media showcase the Waynes as good people who truly want the best for Gotham. That changes when we have the new Nazi collaborators who help build tunnels and a death ray in Gotham. So we'll make the tunnels be an abandoned by the city project to make more reliable transportation. And we could just get rid of the death ray, to be honest. We'll make the Waynes be a family of Gotham that have truly been out for the best for all of its people, but they're still rich. They'll have skeletons in the closet, like Bakar. While there's technically 2 entries before this, presents Von Freeze and issue number 6 of Harley Quinn Black, White, and Red, but I don't feel there's too much to change, and they're not too relevant plot-wise, so here's the next plot-relevant book in the series that has something that actually has to be changed. We'll start with adding a bit more length, 2 issues, bringing us to a total of 8 issues, which while that cuts it out from being a mini in the traditional sense, it's still a pretty typical length of a White Knight book. This way we have a bit more breathing room, but from there we have a lot to change. Alongside the flashbacks we get to the days of Harley and Jack's relationship pre-Joker, I would also like to show flashbacks of Harley's time as Harley Quinn. Honestly, I do think this is a general problem with all of the books. Despite Harley Quinn and the role of the character being so important, we never actually see it. We get like 3 pages of Marion as Harley and like nothing of Harley's time in the role. So I would want to show either of their time as Harley. Heck, I do think it would be interesting to use this to show both of their stretches as Harley and make the reader rely on clues to figure out which Harley this is. This could also do a lot to show us the progression of the Joker into the state he eventually is in, and also shows us what the Joker was even doing. It'll really make it Harley Quinn, and it'll make it even more of an Elseworld about the Joker. There can also definitely be a way that we can use this to parallel the plot with Starlet. Like, there's one page that parallels them really well, so why don't we extrapolate on that even more and expand on it. This way we can get more presence of Harley in her own damn book, while also having fun with this brand new villain we came up with. Also, it's very clear that Starlet was designed to parallel Harley, because she's literally Harley Quinn. Take a look at her design, right? And then look at Harley Quinn in the show Batman Brave and the Bold. It's the same design, except one is more detailed to account for it being a comic instead of animation. Starlet is the 3rd Harley Quinn of the White Knight universe. Then, since it's pretty clear that Harley is not the best mom, why not expand on that a little bit more? Make it a bit more noticeable, make her hypocrisy more visible. This may be like tiny, but to close this out, I want to say that scene with Ivy and Harley, can we sprinkle a little bit more good luck babe energy into that? It's my book now, bitch, so we sure as hell will. We're not going to cover Presents Red Hood here. It's a perfect book, so we're going to move on to Beyond. Beyond is also the book that we're adding the most issues to. Within the 8-issue run that it got, we were missing out on a lot that we should have gotten or that felt integral to the story that it was trying to be told. Some things that needed more time were just given none at all, so we're bumping this all the way up to 12 issues so that we can have as much time as we need. What do we know that time for, you might be asking? The book is called Batman, Beyond the White Knight. What do you think we need more time for? This book is marketing itself as Batman Beyond within the White Knight Elseworld. You know what it has a distinct lack of? Batman Beyond. Terry does not get nearly as much panel time as you would expect him to, with his name being on the cover and all. So, we're going to include way more scenes with him in them. Particularly, we're going to have more scenes showcasing both the manipulative claws that Powers has and the way that he behaves as Batman. In the last issue of Beyond, Powers tells Terry that he needs to be his own Batman. That doesn't mean much when he's hardly Batman to begin with here. Give us a chance to see him as Batman, and then maybe I'll talk. Very small side note, but Terry would absolutely have killed Powers if this was the show. That kid was killing a lot more people than you would think that Bruce would allow. And if the book spent more time with him, we would probably be able to tell this about his character. But we don't get to know who he is as a person. But, showing Powers and Terry interacting more could also help set him up as a more threatening villain, slowly hint at his true intentions, but keep both the reader and Terry mostly in the dark about what he's doing. He's also been more of a silent threat, so it'd be stupid of us not to capitalize on that, especially when we have Terry so clearly being used by him for some end goal that he knows nothing about. Makes him way scarier, and gives the reader a mystery to work their brain over. Also with Powers, you need to make up your mind. Either lean into the weird, icky, creep vibes, or move away from them. Decide if he needs to be put on a list or not. Because as is, there's some clearly weird grooming vibes between both the way he talks to Terry and the way he talks about Jackie that make it all very uncomfortable because you do not know if these are intentional or not. Speaking of Jackie and Powers, we should also explore that a lot more, because in the current version of this, she isn't in issues 2, 3, or 7. That's almost half of the run that she's not in. As a main character, you'd think she'd be in more of these. And also, mind you, in all of the issues she is in, it's for a fraction of the book. Maybe a scene or two. Maybe a few more in issues 4 and 8, but other than that, she's in like one scene each issue. This is especially a problem given the fact that this is basically her introduction. You could say otherwise, and she was technically introduced of Curse of the White Knight, but that doesn't mean much when in the past 3 books she's been in, she was either an actual infant or a toddler. This is her first chance to show off any semblance of a personality, so why not actually make good use of it and do a good job with it? Especially, giving us more scenes with her and Powers can also give us a better idea of her relationship with her parents, and her connection to Jack despite never having gotten to meet him. Show us why Powers took her to give her a job instead of just taking her for the sake of it. Show us what makes her special. The point of a Beyond book is to give us the taste of the next generation, after Bruce and the classic Bat family. So, in that case, why did this book have so little of this next generation? And in the case of one of them, specifically the title character, why don't we get to see what happens to him next? We don't know what happened to Terry after Beyond. For all that we're told, we just kind of assume that Bruce says Batman belongs to everyone, and Terry just kind of goes off into the distance to be Batman with absolutely no guidance or idea what he's doing. No mentorship aspect to be seen. Just amazing. So, why don't we give Terry a next step? Tell us where he goes next. Does Bruce leave him to the streets, or does he take him under his wing to teach him? With the typical Beyond story, he would mentor him, but in this one, it seems to stand that he wouldn't. Because of this, at some point in the future, we really do have to have a book that focuses on Terry specifically. Batman White Knight presents Generation Batman, anyone? I'm writing this as a joke, but I do think I need to add that actually. Give me a minute. Onto, Gen J, the most recent installment, and therefore the last stop on our rewrite before we get into the part that is basically just writing. I do have another idea for Gen J that we'll get into a bit later, since I do think it needs a bit of an explanation for that comes in one of my original Presents books. Don't worry about it for now. So, Generation Joker is also the only book that we're changing significantly while also not changing the length of the book at all. It did manage to do what it did within the time it was given. I'm gonna start by adding more flashbacks. We already have a good amount of flashbacks, but some issues don't. So, we're gonna use those spaces where we can to show off more of the twins' childhood and growing up, because there's a lot of time between seeing them as toddlers and seeing them as preteens. And with this, we're also going to, at the very least, imply more about their worldview and the way that the world views them. We want to dive into the briefly mentioned bullying that at least Jackie experiences. Do they have any friends? If so, who? If not, can we spend a little time detailing why? Those two are the Joker's kids. Why not show off what that means to them? How it affects their daily lives, and how it affects the way they see themselves and their relationship to their peers, and also their father himself. This is all really important to who they are as characters, but it doesn't seem to be all that touched on in the books. We also know that Bryce talked to Marion during Beyond. What did they talk about? How did Marion get Bryce to trust him? Did she all along know that she was going to use him? We need to answer these questions. Explore their relationship with their mom a bit more, since we know she's not a great one. This is a tiny little thing, I suppose, but can we also get them in some different outfits? I mean, at their age, I did wear the same thing over and over again pretty often, but both of them wearing the exact same thing again that we saw them wearing the last time we saw them is not very likely. Giving them different outfits from and beyond can also characterize them a bit more, because it can show us a bit more of their style and how they express themselves different from each other. I guess now it's on to... Other than just fixing the Presents books that already exist, I think we can do a few things with Presents books that we have come up with ourselves. We're going to assume that we can make as many of these as we want at any length with enough interest to keep things going for as long as we want. Cool. According to the Murphyverse Wikipedia page, which enough reason to exist to have updates on speculation, mentions these possible books. World's Finest White Knight, which is probably going to be the next major entry and will be what returns us to the Murphyverse after Sean Murphy's few year-long hiatus from Batman. We've got no clue when that's ending, but he's taking one, okay? I've got no clue what this is going to be about, and neither do any of my friends, so we're gonna look over this for a little while. An untitled Catwoman story, which doesn't have any source, but would reportedly be written by Clay McCormack, which seems pretty out of nowhere to me. But I would be interested in the way that Clay McCormack would go about writing a Selena Kyle story within the White Knight universe. What does make sense within the world that we've established so far, and what's been set up, would be the quote-unquote untitled Superman series. And the thing about that is its likelihood to be a Presents book instead of a main one. Here's where I do have a few ideas. Starters, of the writers we can pick from, we'll have Katana Collins write it. The artist is up in the air. I think that any artist that does it will be amazing, as is typical of the art in the Murphyverse. People love a love story, and since that's this author's specialty, we'll throw in a classic Lois and Clark romance as a background to small-scale Superman adventures in Metropolis. I think a 6-issue mini would probably be the best fit, since I don't think the alternatives of 2 or 1 issue is right for Superman. Maybe utilize a minor villain, but show off Supes as the true gift to humanity that he is. Since something that seems to be pretty consistent in Murphyverse books written by Collins is having flashbacks, we can intersperse the book with flashbacks back to Clark's childhood with Ma and Pa Kent. Throughout the book, we can also sprinkle in some Daily Planet shenanigans with Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen. I don't have too many ideas since I personally am not too much of a Superman buff. I'm more of a Batman guy. There is one more, however, just labeled as Untitled White Knight Sequel. But when I went to the source, it was talking about Beyond the White Knight. So we're just gonna assume that Beyond is the untitled sequel, and that's already out. Aside from the quote-unquote in development books, there's also the quote-unquote undeveloped books, of which there are only 2 listed on the Wikipedia page. We'll start with quote-unquote untitled Batgirl series, which since we made one significant change to Barbara's outcome in Curse of the White Knight, we're going to call it, drumroll please, Batman White Knight Presents Oracle. That probably wasn't very surprising, I know, but we can do whatever we want to here. So I think we'll start by going with a 6-issue mini, since I think that for the story we want to tell, that should be enough to cover everything we want to, while still not extending this so much that it's dragged out. In this mini, we'll explore Babs' journey in becoming Oracle and how that position works within a world that doesn't have a Batman anymore and already has a GTO. Within this, we'll also delve into the way that her relationship with Dick develops with him on the side of the GTO and her position against it, which we'll also make sure to solidify. Since John Paul Valley is an actual character people actually care about here, we'll make sure to have him show up a few times. We'll balance each issue with a 4 to 6 page flashback of how Babs became Batgirl and how that reflects her current evolution to her true final form in Oracle, just so we can get some cool action shots and cool Batgirl stuff for the people that actually like her as Batgirl clearly want. At the end of the run, we'll tease 2 another Presents books I've come up with. We'll get into that one a little later. I also did have a little idea for a proper White Knight Presents Batgirl book, but it wouldn't be about Babs, or it would be, but she wouldn't be the Batgirl. It would cover either Cassandra Cain or Stephanie Brown stepping into the Batgirl role in her stead, though I was leaning a bit more towards Cass. This one's more of a little plot bunny idea, since I don't have any idea of the story for that one, or how either of the other Batgirls would fit. The final supposed White Knight book from the Wikipedia is what I'm assuming would be a Presents Nightwing book, because, sorry Dick, I doubt you're getting a main chapter. The only thing anyone on my team really had to say about Dick was that he felt like Tim, so I don't think we're going to cover Presents Nightwing, at least not today, but we'll probably cover it if it ever comes to exist. But now, here's the really fun part. If we recall what I've said earlier, in this little experiment I can do whatever the hell I want. And so we're going to make up a few Presents books, just for the fun of it. Why Presents books specifically? Because honestly, there's more you can do with them since they don't have to be as plot central, and it's more just writing stories within White Knight's Gotham and surrounding universe. So we've also got a few ideas that are completely our own. We'll start with the ones I referenced earlier that the Presents Oracle book would lead into, or really not lead into, but more kind of just tease at. This isn't completely out of left field, as it serves to fill two little plot holes left behind in the original Murphyverse, more specifically White Knight itself. Those two little holes being, 1, where is Robin? And where are the people who opposed Jack Napier and the GTO? So, we're gonna tangle with these together. I present to you either White Knight Presents Robin, White Knight Presents Red Robin, White Knight Presents Anarchy, or White Knight Presents Red Robin / Anarchy. I'm very much workshopping the name there. Before I get into the plot idea, right, I do have to say that Anarchy in the last video wasn't actually the only one to have thought of Anarchy in the Murphyverse. A while ago, I briefly entertained the thought to Russ in an oh god, I hope that Sean Murphy never finds out who this character is or we're so screwed way. And recently, when I was talking to Nines about the last video to get an A-OK to post, they saw the section talking about Lonnie, and they'd said that they'd actually wanted to talk about adding him to their things they would change / add, but forgot. Then they were going to text me, and they forgot again. So it seems many of us have had the idea completely separately. But back to the plot, right? Okay, so I'm going to assume that everyone knows who Tim Drake is. He was the third Robin. He was the Robin in Batman the Animated Series. You know him. Anarchy is a bit more complicated and obscure, so I'll give a very quick rundown. Anarchy is Lonnie Mackin, a kid about Robin's age who wants to change Gotham for the better. He's an anarchist and also a child prodigy who opposes a lot of the way that Gotham runs, but wants it to be better. He's a self-proclaimed voice of the people. He's also in Batman Arkham Origins, in case anybody has played that game. I bought it specifically for him. I have severe brain rot. Don't worry about it. And as the voice of the people, instead of the voice of the police state, if he were in the White Knight-verse, he would not be a very big fan of the GTO, basically, and the way it works within Gotham. I can see him very directly opposing the GTO, so that's just what he's going to do, but he's not going to do it alone. In a good chunk of his comic appearances, Anarchy is working beside the Robin that was running at the same time as him, Tim Drake. From time to time, they'd work together, especially later on during Red Robin 2009, where Tim would call Lonnie his best friend. Their friendship is fun, and they can both have a lot to learn from each other. So, for our Presents books, if I have my timeline anywhere near right, we're going to assume that Tim Drake is in his later years as Robin, or has already graduated from Robin and become Red Robin by the time the White Knight is happening. There's a lot of time between White Knight and beyond, so we'll place it literally anywhere there. The run will be about 6 issues, and it'll cover Red Robin seeing the GTO forming and not liking the look of it and seeking out Anarchy because of it. Anarchy has already been opposed to the GTO's surveillance and welcomes the help to his cause. And from there, they spend the run learning the ins and outs of the GTO to figure out how to avoid it and help people bypass the control over Gotham. This way, we can use this to world build a little bit more and get more of a sense of what the GTO actually do, as well as showing Derek Powers' rise to, power. They'll be heroes of the people as opposed to heroes for the cops and the GTO. They will together be the voice of the people. I'd imagine them teaming up with Gan and her efforts at some point, since I can see this taking place overlapping with all that Gan was doing up until we see her in Beyond. And then, also on this thread, Anarchy coming out of nowhere would be a bit weird, I think, so we're going to change something a bit earlier in the release schedule. Generation Joker. Why Generation Joker specifically? Well, there's a lot in a name. Generation Joker is about the Joker's children, quite obviously. In Anarchy's 1999 run, it's shown that it's possible that the Joker is Anarchy's father. It's never explicitly confirmed, and it was said that this was going to be shown to not be true, but Anarchy didn't get another run where they could do this after 1999. I'm not saying that we make Lonnie Jack's kid. I just think it would be cool to reference this plot thread by having him show up in Generation Joker. This would, of course, take place after our new Presents book, so all of that would be settled, but Lonnie would show up at some point briefly, even if it was just a tiny cameo, like him and Tim jumping across rooftops in the background of a panel. If it's anything more, he shows up to coincidentally give the kids and Jack a bit more time by picking a fight with the FBI at the right time. I think that's all for whatever we're going to call this one, but that does not mean that it is my only idea here for an original Presents book. I have 2 ideas here. This would be White Knight Presents Riot and White Knight Presents Poison Ivy. These would, as the name suggests, focus on our leading ladies of Marion, Riot, Neo Joker Drews, and Pamela Poison Ivy Isley. Presents Riot would take place in the time between Presents Harley Quinn and Presents Generation Joker. There really is too long between these two. God, there's literally 10 years to mess around with. Presents Riot would be a 6-issue mini, and only about 2/3 of it would be about Riot. I'll get into that in a second. The book would cover the blossoming relationship between Marion and Ivy and how their bond grew throughout the years we don't see them. We could also focus on Marion's friendship with the Mad Hatter and explain where he disappears off to, since we've yet to see him again after Presents HQ. The final issue would be Marion and Ivy's wedding, just for the sake of it being cute. The reason I brought up the Riot plot only being 2/3 of the book is because I think this would be a good opportunity to show little snapshots of different rogues from before Curse of the White Knight in form of a backup issue in every single issue. Showcase their heists, their bonds, their friendships, their rivalries. Show us what we can do with the rogues in a universe that doesn't depend on rules of what makes sense. Presents Poison Ivy would probably closest in comparison to what was done with Presents Von Freeze. I imagine it as either 1 or 2 issues, not too long since it doesn't have too much going on. This would be our white knightification of Ivy, her backstory, her motivations, and everything about her. And we really could have so much fun with it. This is an alternate universe. Nothing has to line up with canon. It's a Pamapalooza. I just love Poison Ivy. Okay, everyone go read Poison Ivy 2022. It's the best run at DC right now. I love it so much. If you watch my YouTube shorts, you've probably seen me posting about it way too much. My point here, though, is that we got given this Elseworld that focuses so heavily on a villain and the villains of Gotham, and then does absolutely nothing with it. You kill off 90% of them, give 3 of the remaining 4 the occasional cameo, and then Two-Face barely gets a speaking line. Like, come on. Be serious. Be so for real. If I were to be writing this, I can tell you we would have way more stuff involving the rogues. Way more anything with the rogues. Like, please. We need more rogue stuff in general. They're the best characters within any Batman version, especially in an Elseworld, where you can really do anything you want to with them. And this just felt like a serious waste of potential to me. Now, this last one kind of came to me while I was actively writing the script. Like, I'd vaguely had the idea for all of these before I had sat down to write them, but this one I came up with while writing the section on Beyond. I wrote the script out of order, so I'm writing these in quick succession, lol. But Batman White Knight presents Generation Batman. God, that is the stupidest name ever. Whatever, this is a comic book, it's meant to be stupid. Okay, so the idea here is to be the classic Batman Beyond sort of thing. Since Beyond had a lot more going on and was a lot of general setup for further things, I think that we can have what made Batman Beyond fun here. I'm thinking maybe a 4-issue mini that just focuses on Terry and his Batman and his friends. It was physically painful for me that Beyond didn't have Max, or it wasn't painful for me at the time, since when I first picked it up, I did not know what Batman Beyond was. But upon learning about the wonders of it, I was pained at her not being there. So we're gonna make sure to have her here, and make sure that this individual book passes the Bechdel test in its first issue. Since Bruce isn't going to be here, we'll have things a bit different without the mentorship aspect. It'll be a lot of trial and error on Terry's part, but he'll have Max to help him out, and he'll also have his girlfriend. Just some shenanigans. I really didn't have too many ideas here, since I did not think about this for more than 5 minutes, but enjoy anyways. I'm pretty sure that's all I want to talk about in terms of future expansion, so why don't we take a second to entertain an idea that is just a complete overhaul of everything that already exists. This, of course, being the idea that we scrap everything, go back to White Knight, and make an basically tiny change that ripples out and changes everything completely. We take the Joker out, and we replace him with Two-Face. Obviously, this changes a lot of things about White Knight. Literally everything involving Harley doesn't happen because Harvey doesn't have a Harley. Chances are, it doesn't have anything beyond the OG book either. But a lot of things would suddenly make sense. Why does he go sane? Because that's a thing that Two-Face does pretty often, including pretty recently. Why the interest in politics all of a sudden? Harvey is a lawyer. Specifically, he was the district attorney. Why is he a white knight? If you watch The Dark Knight, Harvey is actually called a White Knight for Gotham, so that's not a brand new thing for him either. The main idea of the plot, it all works better for Two-Face than it ever did Joker. But I guess the Joker sells better. I do believe that's all the ideas I've got about how I'd rewrite or change the Murphyverse, or at the very least, all of the ideas that stick to the core idea of the Murphyverse and the world that's been established without stripping away everything there and making a new world entirely, and isn't just straight fan fiction. If you made it this far, do you think you could drop a like or a comment? Any ideas of your own that you would like to share with the class? And if you liked all 3 videos and want to see more, I really do suggest subscribing and ringing that notification bell to see more from me in the future. Thank you. I had a really good time doing all of this, and I really couldn't have done this without the ideas from my friends, and I really am grateful that they worked together with me on this to put together something really cool that I really enjoyed putting together. Until next time, listeners.